Welcome to the captivating realm of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss any of our exciting new stories. Enjoy the journey.
The explosion reverberated through the slave ship, and Adam charged through the smoke-filled corridor, his eyes sharp like a hawk scanning the dimly lit holding area. Cages lined the walls, most of them empty except for one. Inside sat a woman unlike any Adam had encountered before. Her skin shimmered with a captivating shade of blue, and her figure was sculpted to perfection, but it was her eyes that truly entranced him, deep pools of defiance that barely concealed a tempest of despair. Adam's mind raced, taking in a multitude of details within seconds, fresh scratch marks on the cage's bars, faint blood stains on her knuckles, and a slight tremor in her shoulders indicating recent exertion. "You tried to escape, didn't you?" he stated, more as a fact than a question. The woman's eyes widened in fear. "How did you?" "There's no time," Adam interrupted, his fingers deftly working the lock. "I'm Adam. I'm getting you out of here." With a metallic groan, the cage door swung open. The woman hesitated, caught between distrust and desperation. "You're strong," Adam noted, observing the defined muscles beneath her azure skin. "That'll be useful. Now, let's go." She rose gracefully, despite her confinement. "I'm Rui." Adam nodded curtly as he moved ahead. "Stay close, Rui, and keep quiet." They crept through the corridors, Adam's eyes constantly scanning for threats. He catalogued every detail, worn patches on the floor indicating frequent patrols. Slight discolorations around certain panels hinting at hidden security measures. "There are 3 cameras at the next junction," he whispered. "We'll have a 12-second blind spot when we turn the corner. Move quickly." Rui stared at him, bewildered. "How could you possibly know that?" "I pay attention to things," Adam replied with a humorless smile. They dashed across the junction, and Adam's timing was impeccable as they pressed against the wall on the other side. Rui gasped for breath. "Who are you?" she hissed. "Someone who understands what it means to be a slave," Adam answered firmly. "Now, be quiet. A guard is coming." True to his word, heavy footsteps echoed moments later. Adam tensed, ready to spring into action. When the guard rounded the corner, Adam struck swiftly, his hand clamping around the man's throat in a vice-like grip. With a brutal twist, the guard collapsed silently. Rui's eyes widened with a mix of fear and admiration. "You're really good at this." "It's a necessity," Adam grunted, already moving again. "We need to get 2 levels down to the escape pods. Are you ready to run?" Rui nodded, determination replacing her fear. They descended through the ship, Adam taking out guards with ruthless efficiency. Rui marveled at his fluid movements, the way he seemed to anticipate threats before they materialized, as they reached the escape pod bay. Alarms blared. Adam cursed under his breath. "They've realized you're gone," he said, entering the launch codes. "We have about 3 minutes before this place is crawling with guards." The pod door hissed open. Adam ushered Rui inside, then paused, his keen eyes sweeping the bay once more. "What's wrong?" Rui asked, anxiety creeping into her voice. Adam furrowed his brow. "Something feels off. The security response is too slow, too predictable. It's almost like," suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the ship, cutting off his words. Adam dove into the pod, slamming the launch button as they shot into space. The slave ship erupted into flames behind them, in the sudden silence of the escape pod. Rui turned to Adam, her blue skin pale with shock. "What just happened?" Adam's expression was hard and calculating. Someone else wanted that ship destroyed. Someone powerful enough to override its security systems. He met Rui's gaze, raising a crucial question: "Just how valuable are you?" Rui swallowed hard, fear and uncertainty battling in her expression. I don't know." Adam studied her carefully, noting every detail, the fine quality of her clothing beneath the grime, the faint accent in her speech, and her poised demeanor despite the ordeal. His mind was connecting the dots that were invisible to most. "You're not just any slave," he said slowly. "You're someone important. Someone dangerous to the wrong people." Rui's shoulders sagged, her fighting spirit seemingly extinguished. "My family, they sold me. Said it was for the good of our people. I never understood why." Adam's expression softened slightly. "Political intrigue, galactic power plays. You were a pawn in someone else's game." Rui looked up, a flicker of her earlier defiance returning, and a faint smile crossed Adam's lips. "Now you're a wild card. In my experience, those are the most dangerous pieces on the board." The pod sped through space, leaving destruction behind. Yet as Rui gazed into the starry void, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the start of a much larger story. Adam interrupted her thoughts. "We need to find a place to lay low. I know a spot in the outer rim, but it won't be comfortable." Rui turned to him, a wry smile forming. "After being in that cage, anything is an improvement." Adam chuckled, the sound surprising even him. "Fair point. Still, it won't be easy. We'll be hunted." "We?" Rui raised an eyebrow. "You don't have to get involved any further. You've already done more than enough." Adam's expression turned serious. "I made a choice when I freed you from that cage. I don't leave things unfinished." Rui scrutinized him, curiosity overpowering her caution. "Why did you save me? You don't know me, you owe me nothing." Adam was silent for a long moment. His eyes distant. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and filled with old pain. "Because a long time ago, someone did the same for me, and I vowed to pay it forward when I could." Rui felt a deep impact from his admission. She reached out, hesitating only briefly before placing her hand on his arm. "Thank you," she said simply. Adam tensed at the contact but then gradually relaxed. He cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the moment. "Well, don't thank me yet. We still have to survive long enough to find out why someone wants you badly enough to blow up an entire slave ship." Rui withdrew her hand, but a small smile played on her lips. "At least the company won't be boring." Adam snorted. "Boring is safe. Boring means living to see another day. And yet here you are, rescuing strange alien women and making powerful enemies." Rui countered, and Adam conceded. He turned to the pod's controls, plotting their course. "Get some rest if you can. Once we hit atmosphere on Zeta 9, things will get interesting." Rui leaned back in her seat, watching Adam work. His fingers flew over the console with practiced ease, his eyes darting between readouts. She marveled at the intensity of his focus, how he processed information at an inhuman speed. "You mentioned you noticed things," she ventured after a moment. "What do you notice about me?" Adam glanced at her. His gaze analytical rather than appreciative. "You come from a wealthy family but have never worked a day in your life. The calluses on your hands are fresh, you got them fighting in that cage. Your posture indicates a solid education in etiquette, yet there's a rebellious streak in how you hold your chin." He paused, meeting her eyes. "You're scared, but you're also angry, and beneath all that, you're dangerously curious." Rui blinked, taken aback by his accuracy. "That's impressive, and a little unnerving." Adam shrugged. "It's kept me alive so far." "And what do you think I notice about you?" Rui asked, a hint of challenge in her voice. Adam's lips curved slightly. "I think you notice that I'm trying very hard not to think about how attractive you are." Rui felt warmth rise in her cheeks, her blue skin deepening. That's not what I meant." "No." Adam's tone was light, but his gaze was sharp. "Then what did you mean?" Rui took a breath, gathering her thoughts. "I notice that you're haunted, that you carry yourself like a man who's always ready for a fight, and that despite your tough exterior, you have a strong moral compass." Adam looked surprised. He opened his mouth to respond, but a warning light on the console interrupted him. Proximity alert, he muttered. Looks like we have company. Slavers? Rui asked. Adam shook his head. Worse. Bounty hunters. He met Rui's gaze, his expression grim. Hold on, this ride is about to get bumpy. As the pod accelerated, evading laser fire from their pursuers, Rui gripped her seat. Despite the danger, she felt more alive than she had in years. She glanced at Adam, whose face was set in concentration as he navigated through a field of asteroids. Whatever happened next? She understood that life would never be dull again. The escape pod raced through the asteroid field, Adam's hands expertly maneuvering the controls with incredible speed. The laser fire from the chasing bounty hunters lit up the cramped cockpit in brief flashes of red. Hold on. Adam barked, sharply pulling the steering yoke to the left. The pod lurched violently, narrowly missing a massive space rock. Rui tightened her grip on her seat, her knuckles turning pale. I thought you said you could fly this thing. I can, Adam replied, a smirk tugging at his lips. I just never claimed to be good at it. A blast too close for comfort shook the pod, triggering the alarms. Adam's eyes raced over the readouts. His mind processing the information at lightning speed. We've lost our rear deflector, he declared, his voice strained. If we take another hit like that, we're toast. Rui's eyes widened. Please tell me you have a plan. Adam focused on a particularly dense cluster of asteroids ahead. Actually, I do, but you might not like it. Before Rui could object, Adam plunged the pod directly into the asteroid swarm. Rui suppressed a scream as giant rocks seemed to come at them from every direction. Adam's fingers flew over the controls, making tiny adjustments with remarkable precision. The pod weaved through gaps that seemed impossibly narrow, avoiding collisions by mere inches. One of the pursuing ships wasn't so fortunate, it clipped an asteroid and spiraled out of control, exploding in a spectacular fireball. One down, Adam muttered, his concentration unbroken as they emerged from the asteroid cluster. Rui let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. That was amazing. Adam allowed himself a small grin. Thanks. Now let's hope that bought us enough time. He entered a series of coordinates, and the pod's hyperdrive engaged. With a jolt, the stars elongated into streaks of light, and they hurtled through the swirling blue tunnel of hyperspace. As the adrenaline of their close escape began to fade, Rui studied Adam's profile. His jaw was set tight. And his eyes darted over the readouts, anticipating another threat at any moment. Where are we headed? She asked softly. Zeta 9, Adam replied, finally relaxing into his seat. It's a remote planet in the outer rim. Not much there except sand and rocks, but it should be safe enough to hide out for a while. Rui nodded, wincing as the movement aggravated a bruise on her neck. Adam noticed immediately. You're hurt, he said, reaching for a medkit hidden beneath the console. It's nothing, Rui protested, but Adam was already inspecting the injury with gentle fingers. Electrical burns, he noted, his voice becoming serious. Standard slaver equipment, I'd guess. Rui looked away. A deep blue shame coloring her cheeks. They didn't take kindly to my escape attempts. Adam paused, then spoke softly. What matters is that you survived. He applied a cooling salve to her burn, his touch clinical but caring. Rui found herself relaxing, lulled by the soothing hum of the hyperdrive and Adam's unexpected kindness. Why are you really helping me? Rui asked, searching his face. It can't just be about repaying a debt. Adam's hand stilled on the bandage. He was silent for a moment, staring out at a distant point beyond the pod's viewport. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and almost hesitant. Because every time I see you, I see myself. That same fear, that same desperation. He paused, his jaw tightening. I remember what it felt like to be powerless. Rui turned to face him, searching his eyes. For a moment, she glimpsed the pain hidden beneath his tough exterior. you were a slave too, she realized. Adam's jaw tightened, but he nodded. A lifetime ago. Some scars, however, never fade. Rui felt her breath catch. How do you cope with them? Adam's eyes met hers, filled with a mix of pain and resolve. You don't let them define you. You learn to use them. They become your armor, your motivation. The vulnerability in his words stirred something within Rui. Without thinking, she reached out and placed her hand on his arm. Adam tensed at the contact but didn't pull away. Thank you, she said simply, the words heavy with unspoken feelings. Their eyes locked, and for a heartbeat, the atmosphere between them crackled with potential. Then Adam cleared his throat and pulled back slightly. Get some rest, he said gruffly. We've got a few hours before we reach Zeta 9, and I have a feeling we'll need all our energy. Rui nodded and settled back in her seat, drifting off to sleep to the soothing hum of the hyperdrive. Her last conscious thought was of the enigma beside her, a man capable of both cold efficiency and surprising compassion. The pod landed on Zeta 9 with a jarring thud, kicking up a cloud of reddish dust. Adam powered down the engines and performed a quick systems check. Well, it's not pretty, but we made it in one piece, he announced, opening the hatch with a hiss. A wave of scorching air rushed in, and Rui squinted against the brightness. You weren't exaggerating about the sand and rocks, she muttered. Adam smirked slightly. Told you it wasn't much to look at, but it's off the main trade routes, so we should be able to avoid detection for a while. He stepped out of the pod, his sharp eyes scanning their surroundings. The landscape was a vast expanse of red dunes, punctuated only by the occasional wind-sculpted rock formation. There's an abandoned mining outpost about 2 clicks east, Adam pointed out. It'll give us shelter and a defensible position. Rui nodded, trying to ignore the prickling sensation of the harsh sunlight on her skin. Lead the way. They set off across the dunes, the twin suns of Zeta 9 beating down relentlessly. Adam moved with the grace of someone used to harsh conditions, while Rui struggled to keep pace. As they crested a particularly steep dune, Rui stumbled. Adam instinctively reached out to steady her with surprising gentleness. Are you okay? He asked, concern flashing across his features. Rui nodded, catching her breath. Just not used to this kind of terrain. Adam's eyes narrowed as he assessed the situation. Your home world has lower gravity, right? And a denser atmosphere? No wonder you're having trouble. Rui blinked, surprised by his insight. How could you know that? A faint smile appeared on Adam's lips. The way you move, your muscle development, the slight hesitation in your stride as you adapt to each step. Rui shook her head, a mix of awe and unease washing over her. Is there anything you don't notice? Adam's expression turned serious. Plenty. But in my line of work, overlooking details can get you killed. They continued in silence, each lost in their own thoughts as they neared the abandoned outpost. Adam raised a hand, signaling Rui to halt. What's wrong? She whispered, tension tightening in her stomach. His gaze swept over the crumbling buildings, absorbing countless details. Something feels off. The sand patterns are disturbed. Someone's been here recently. Rui's heart began to race. Bounty hunters? No, Adam replied, shaking his head. This is something else. Probably local scavengers. But we need to stay cautious. He guided them along the edge of the outpost, moving with the stealth of a cat. As they neared a half-collapsed storage shed, a flicker of movement caught Rui's attention. Before she could react, Adam sprang into action, tackling her to the ground just as a blaster bolt whizzed through the air where her head had been. Stay down, Adam commanded, already rolling back to his feet. 3 figures appeared from the ruins, wielding makeshift weapons. Their tattered clothing indicated they were desperate locals, scavenging to survive in this harsh environment. We don't want any trouble, Adam shouted, his hands raised in a calming gesture. We're just looking for shelter. The leader, a rugged man with glinting cybernetic implants, sneered back at him. Shelter isn't free, offworlder. If you want to stay, you'll have to pay. Adam's eyes shifted between the three scavengers, evaluating the danger they posed. Rui could almost see the calculations running through his mind. What about a trade? Adam proposed. We have supplies in our pod, food, water, medical supplies, more than enough to make it worth your while. The scavengers exchanged glances, clearly tempted, but the leader's cybernetic eye locked onto Rui. Or maybe we just take the girl. I bet she'd fetch a nice price with the right buyer. Adam's demeanor changed subtly, and Rui felt the tension emanating from him. When he spoke again, his voice was eerily calm. That's not an option. The leader's grin widened, revealing stained teeth. Not your call, pretty boy. He raised his blaster, but Adam was already a blur of movement, too fast for Rui to track. He closed the distance, landing a solid punch to the leader's face, sending him sprawling. The other two scavengers opened fire, but Adam was already ahead of them. He dove, rolled, and came up with the leader's fallen blaster. A couple of precise shots later, the scavengers lay groaning on the ground, nursing non-lethal injuries. Rui stared in awe as Adam calmly disarmed the incapacitated attackers. That was impressive. Adam shrugged, though Rui could sense the tension still thrumming through him. Like I said, in my line of work, you learn to read people and situations. He turned to the leader, who was struggling to rise, blood streaming from his broken nose. Now, let's try this again. We need shelter, you need supplies. I think we can reach an agreement that doesn't involve further violence. What do you say? The leader glared but eventually nodded. Fine, but don't think this makes us friends. Adam managed a humorless smile. Wouldn't dream of it. As they assisted the wounded scavengers into the cooler air of the main building, Rui regarded Adam with newfound respect. His efficiency in neutralizing the threat was remarkable, but it was his restraint, disabling rather than killing, that truly impressed her. Once inside, Adam began treating the scavengers' wounds with the same clinical detachment he had shown when helping Rui earlier. As he worked, he maintained a steady stream of questions, gathering intel about the planet, recent visitors, and potential dangers. Rui was amazed at how effortlessly he extracted information while seeming relaxed. By the time he finished, she was certain he knew more about Zeta 9 than those who had lived there for years. As night fell, bringing a chill, Adam and Rui retreated to a small room they had claimed. Adam immediately set to work fortifying their position, rigging makeshift alarms and ensuring clear lines of sight. Rui observed him, a question burning in her mind. Finally, she couldn't hold back any longer. Earlier with the scavengers, she began tentatively, you could have easily killed them. Why didn't you? Adam paused, his back turned to her. He remained silent for a long moment, making Rui worry she had crossed a line. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, heavy with memory. Because a long time ago, someone showed me mercy when they could have ended my life. It changed everything. He turned to face her, and Rui was struck by the intensity of his gaze. Life is cheap out here on the rim, but that doesn't mean it's not valuable. Rui nodded, feeling as if she were discovering a new layer of this enigmatic man. You're full of surprises, Adam. A faint smile crossed his lips. I try to keep things interesting. As they settled in for the night, Rui became acutely aware of Adam's presence nearby. He was a complex puzzle, capable of ruthless efficiency yet showing unexpected kindness. Just as she was drifting off to sleep, a thought occurred to her. Adam, she murmured, thank you for saving me again. In the dark, she couldn't see his expression, but she heard him take a soft breath before he replied. Get some rest, Rui. I have a feeling we'll need it. As sleep took her, Rui's last conscious thought was that maybe, just maybe, she had found someone she could trust in this vast, uncaring galaxy, the harsh light of Zeta 9's twin suns filtered through the cracks in the dilapidated outpost, waking Adam from his restless sleep. His eyes snapped open, instantly alert. Years of training had him reaching for his blaster before he even registered the sound that had stirred him, a faint rhythmic beeping from the makeshift communications array he had assembled the night before. He glanced at Rui, who was still peacefully asleep on her improvised bed. The blue of her skin seemed to glow softly in the dim light, a stark reminder of how different, and precious, she was. Adam allowed himself a moment to study her, noting the way her chest rose and fell with each breath, the slight furrow of her brow even in slumber. Then he shook off the distraction and moved quietly to the comm unit. The message was encrypted, but Adam's agile fingers quickly navigated the security protocols. As the data streamed across the screen, his eyes widened. This was much more significant than he had anticipated. Rui, he called softly, his voice urgent. Wake up. We have a problem. Rui stirred, blinking awake. What is it? She asked, instantly on alert at the tension in Adam's voice. Adam's jaw tightened as he processed the information before him. It's worse than we thought. The slave trade, it reaches all the way to the top. The Galactic Council is involved. Rui sat up, shock evident on her face. That's impossible. The Council is supposed to protect, they're supposed to do many things, Adam interrupted bitterly. But power corrupts, and there's no greater power than controlling the lives of others. He turned the screen toward her, pointing out key details in the data. Look at these shipping manifests, these financial transactions. They're using diplomatic channels to move slaves and laundering money through shell companies. Rui's eyes scanned the information, her complexion growing paler with each revelation. Suddenly, she froze, her finger hovering over a familiar name. No, she whispered, barely audible. It can't be. Adam leaned in, following her gaze, and his sharp eyes caught the name immediately, a high-ranking official from Rui's home planet. You know them, he stated, not a question. Rui nodded, her voice hollow. It's my father. The heavy silence that followed was charged with shock and betrayal. Adam watched a whirlwind of emotions play across Rui's face, disbelief, anger, grief. I'm sorry, he said softly, surprised by the genuine empathy in his voice. Rui met his gaze, her eyes filled with steely determination that nearly made him step back. Don't be. This ends now. Adam nodded, a plan already forming in his mind. We need to expose this and bring down the entire operation. But it won't be easy. We're dealing with some of the most powerful people in the galaxy. To navigate the galaxy, we'll need to be more strategic, Rui stated, her voice becoming more assertive, faster and smarter. A hint of a smile appeared on Adam's lips. Now you're speaking my language. He redirected his attention to the communication unit, his fingers rapidly tapping on the keys. I have some contacts, people who owe me favors. We'll require resources, especially transportation. As he detailed the outline of their plan, he could sense Rui watching him. When he looked up, he was taken aback by the intensity of her stare. What is it? He asked, feeling suddenly self-conscious. You're in your element, she noted. This is your specialty, isn't it? Taking on insurmountable challenges. Righting wrongs, Adam shrugged, feeling uneasy with her admiration. I just do what needs to be done. Rui stepped closer, her hand resting gently on his arm. I'm glad to have you on my side. For a brief moment, Adam allowed himself to relish the warmth of her touch, the bond that had been strengthening between them with each passing day. But he quickly cleared his throat, redirecting his focus to their objective. We need to act quickly, he stated, already gathering their scant supplies. The longer we wait, the better their chances of covering their tracks. Rui nodded, her expression resolute. Where do we begin? Adam's eyes sparkled with a mix of excitement and peril. We're heading to the core of it all, the Galactic Council's headquarters on Centaur Prime. As they got ready to leave the relative safety of their hideout, Adam found himself observing Rui from the corner of his eye. She was moving with newfound determination, her earlier uncertainty replaced by a fierce resolve. He felt a blend of pride and concern, realizing she was no longer the frightened runaway he had saved, she was evolving into a formidable force on her own. "Are you ready?" he asked as they stood at the entrance of the abandoned outpost. Rui met his gaze, her blue skin shimmering as if lit from within. Ready. Together, they stepped into the bright sunlight of Zeta 9. Leaving behind the relative security of their hideout and moving toward a confrontation that could shake the very foundations of the galaxy, the journey to Centaur Prime was a whirlwind of hyperspace jumps, close calls, and tense strategy sessions. Adam called in every favor he could, piecing together the necessary resources for their bold plan. Rui quickly demonstrated her ability to learn, absorbing Adam's teachings on stealth, combat, and deception with enthusiasm that both impressed and concerned him. As their stolen ship exited hyperspace, revealing Centaur Prime, Adam felt a familiar tension coil within him. The planet before them was a dazzling gem, its surface a blend of sprawling cities and meticulously maintained wilderness areas. It was stunning, tranquil, yet home to some of the most corrupt figures in the galaxy. "Isn't it breathtaking?" Rui whispered, her gaze fixed on the world ahead. Adam grunted in acknowledgement, his hands deftly maneuvering the ship's controls as he initiated their landing sequence. "Don't let the glitter deceive you, there's decay at the heart of that beautiful facade." Rui's expression hardened. "Then let's remove it." They touched down at a small private spaceport on the outskirts of the capital. As they exited, Adam's sharp eyes surveyed their surroundings, noting countless details, the wear on the landing pad, the angles of the security cameras, the subtle tension in the body language of the spaceport workers. Everything painted a picture that heightened his anxiety. "We're being monitored," he murmured to Rui as they approached the exit. Rui nodded almost imperceptibly. Her stance relaxed, but her eyes remained vigilant. "I noticed the man at the fuel pumps hasn't actually refueled any ship since we arrived." Adam smiled slightly. "She's learning quickly." They wove through the crowded streets of the capital, blending in with a multitude of beings from various worlds. Adam led them on a winding path, doubling back and altering their direction seemingly at random. To an onlooker, they might have appeared as lost tourists, but Adam was methodically evading any tails while gathering information with each intentional detour. As night descended, they found themselves in a rundown bar in the industrial district of the city. The patrons were rough, comprising dock workers, low-level criminals, and those who preferred to keep their dealings hidden from view. Adam settled into a booth in the back corner, his gaze continually scanning the room. Rui sat opposite him, her blue skin concealed beneath a hooded cloak. "So," she said in a low voice, "what's our next step?" Adam leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. "We need access to the Council's secure networks. There's a data hub 2 levels beneath the main chamber. If we can infiltrate it, we can download all the information necessary to expose their entire operation." Rui's eyes widened. "That's ambitious. The security will be intense." A faint smile flickered across Adam's lips. "That's where you come in. Your father's access code should still be active. We can use that to get through the door, and then I'll take care of the rest." Rui's expression darkened at the mention of her father, but she nodded with determination. "And once we acquire the data, we'll broadcast it to every news outlet, every planetary government, and every individual with a communication device in the galaxy." Adam's eyes shone with fierce intensity. "We can dismantle their entire corrupt system in one swift blow." As he spoke, Adam noticed a flicker of movement near the bar. A man dressed inconspicuously was watching them too closely, his hand hovering near a concealed weapon. "We have company," Adam whispered, maintaining a relaxed posture while coiling his muscles for action. "When I give the signal, head for the back exit. Don't look back. Don't hesitate." Rui nodded, her face a mask of calm, despite the tension that thrummed in the air. The next moments unfolded in a flurry of action. Adam's hands shot out, flipping their table towards their would-be attacker. In the same swift motion, he drew his blaster and fired, hitting the man in the shoulder and sending him crashing to the ground. "Now!" Adam shouted, already sprinting toward the exit. They burst into the night. the sounds of chaos erupting behind them. Adam led them through a maze of back alleys and service corridors, his encyclopedic knowledge of the city's layout steering their escape. Finally, they slowed down, catching their breath in the shadow of a towering hab block. Rui turned to Adam, a mix of exhilaration and fear in her eyes. "How did you know?" she panted. "About the assassin?" "About the escape route." Adam met her gaze, a hint of a smile appearing on his lips despite the seriousness of their situation. "I told you, I noticed things." The way he carried himself, the bulge of a concealed weapon, the fact that he ordered a drink but never touched it. "As for the escape, let's just say I've had to make a few hasty exits in my time." Rui shook her head in disbelief. "You're amazing, you know that." For a moment, the facade of the hardened operative faltered, and Rui caught a glimpse of genuine emotion in Adam's eyes. But before he could respond, the wail of approaching sirens pulled them back to reality. "We need to move," Adam said, his voice regaining its professional tone. "The council building is close." "It's now or never," Rui nodded, her face set with determination. "Let's finish this." They traversed the city like shadows, using Adam's intimate knowledge of its layout to evade patrols and security checkpoints. As they neared the imposing structure of the Galactic Council headquarters, Adam felt a familiar mix of tension and exhilaration coursing through him. This was what he thrived on, the thrill of the impossible mission, the opportunity to correct wrongs on a grand scale, but as he glanced at Rui and saw the fierce determination in her eyes, he understood that this time was different. For the first time in years, he wasn't just fighting for a cause, he was fighting for someone. The realization filled him with both excitement and dread. They entered the council building through a service entrance, Rui's stolen access codes granting them entry. As they ventured deeper into the heart of galactic power, Adam's senses were on high alert. Documenting every detail of their environment, Adam whispered, "The data hub is 2 levels down," as they slipped into an empty office to evade a passing security detail. "Once we're in, we'll have about 10 minutes before they figure out something's off." Rui nodded, her face focused and serious. "What do you need from me?" Adam managed a small smile. "Just keep an eye out and be ready to run like crazy when I say the word." They approached the restricted elevator that would lead them to the data hub. While Adam worked on bypassing the security measures, Rui stayed vigilant, her senses heightened for any signs of danger. Suddenly, the elevator doors slid open, and Adam and Rui stepped inside. The tension palpable as they descended into the depths of the conspiracy that had changed their lives. The data hub was an expansive room filled with rows of blinking servers. Adam moved decisively, his fingers dancing across the controls as he began extracting the incriminating evidence they needed. "How long will it take?" Rui asked, her eyes scanning for any threats. 5 minutes, Adam replied, his attention locked on his task. "Maybe less if we get lucky." But it seemed luck was not on their side. Just as the data transfer hit the halfway mark, alarms blared throughout the facility. "We've been detected," Adam growled, his hands moving even more swiftly across the console. "Get ready to run." Rui nodded, her body coiled for action, but as the sound of footsteps echoed in the corridors, realization dawned on her. "Wait," she said, her voice suddenly confident. "I have an idea." Before Adam could object, Rui stepped into the open, throwing back her hood to reveal her distinctive blue skin. As the first security team rounded the corner, weapons drawn, she spoke with authority. "Stand down. I am Rui, daughter of Counselor Zach Seth. This man is my personal security detail, and we are conducting an authorized audit of these systems." Adam watched in astonishment as the guards hesitated, clearly caught off guard by the unexpected presence of a council member's daughter in a restricted area. Rui continued, her voice unwavering. "If you want to verify my credentials, please contact my father immediately. I'm sure he'll be more than happy to explain why his daughter is in secure areas without proper clearance." The lead guard lowered his weapon, uncertainty etched on his face. I'm sorry, my lady." We weren't informed of any audit. That's exactly the point of a security test, isn't it? Rui replied, her tone laced with aristocratic disdain. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have work to do. As the guards retreated, clearly unwilling to risk angering a council member, Adam stared at Rui, admiration in his eyes. That, he said with an impressed whistle, was incredible. Rui beamed, the adrenaline from their close call evident in her expression. I learned from the best. Now let's finish what we started. They turned back to the console, the data transfer now complete. Adam swiftly began broadcasting the incriminating evidence throughout the galaxy. As the information flowed out, exposing the corruption at the heart of the Galactic Council, Adam felt a huge weight lift off his shoulders. Years spent fighting against a seemingly unbeatable foe had culminated in this moment. It's finally done, he murmured, almost in disbelief. We actually did it. Rui's hand found his and squeezed gently. We did it together. Their eyes locked, and in that instant, all the unspoken feelings between them surged forth. Without thinking, Adam drew Rui close, their lips meeting in a kiss filled with passion and relief. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Adam chuckled. You know, he said with a smirk, I usually wait until after the daring escape to kiss the girl. Rui's eyes sparkled with mischief. Since when do you follow the rules? Their moment of joy was abruptly interrupted by the sound of alarms. The ruse with the guards wouldn't last long, and they still had to escape the building alive. Ready for one last adventure? Adam asked, reaching for his blaster. Rui nodded, her expression determined. Always, they raced toward an uncertain future. But one thing was clear, whatever challenges awaited them, they would face them together. 5 years later, on a tranquil planet far from the chaos of the galactic core, Adam stood on the porch of their modest home, watching the sunset bathe the sky in vibrant colors. The sound of laughter caught his attention, and he smiled as he saw Rui chasing their young daughter through the tall grass. The fall of the corrupt council and the subsequent upheaval in galactic politics had been tumultuous, but from that chaos, a new and more just order had begun to take shape. Slavery had been abolished across known space, and efforts were underway to right the wrongs of centuries of exploitation. Adam and Rui had played a crucial role in shaping this new future, using their unique skills and experiences to help create a better galaxy. But they had also discovered something they had thought was impossible, a home, a family, a place to belong. As Rui approached, holding their giggling daughter, Adam felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the setting sun. What are you thinking about? Rui asked, her azure skin glowing in the golden light. Adam smiled, reaching out to stroke their daughter's cheek. Just how far we've come and how different everything is now. Rui nodded, understanding the depth of his words. We've created something beautiful, haven't we? Their daughter. A perfect blend of her parents with lighter blue skin and Adam's sharp eyes, squirmed in Rui's arms. Daddy, can we go look at the stars tonight? You promised to show me where you and Mommy had your first adventure. Adam laughed, taking the child into his arms. Of course, Frida, right after dinner. But first, let's help your mother set the table. As they turned to go inside, Adam's wrist communicator beeped. He glanced at it, his expression turning serious for a moment. Rui noticed immediately. Another mission? Adam nodded. Looks like there's trouble brewing in the Outer Rim. Some remnants of the old guard are trying to revive the slave trade. Rui's eyes flashed with determination. We can't let that happen, can we? No, we can't, Adam agreed, a familiar thrill of excitement coursing through him. He looked down at Frida. But this time, little one, you'll stay with Aunt Zara. Mommy and Daddy have some important work to do. Frida pouted briefly but then brightened. Can I practice my observation skills while you're gone, like you taught me, Daddy? Adam grinned, ruffling her hair. Absolutely. You'll be the sharpest-eyed kid in the galaxy by the time we get back, as they went inside to prepare for the upcoming mission and Frida stayed with Aunt Zara, Adam felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The galaxy was still far from perfect, but they were making it better one day at a time. More importantly, they were doing it together. The adventure that had united them had never truly ended, it had simply evolved, becoming richer and more meaningful with each passing year. Watching Rui and Frida excitedly discussing stargazing plans, Adam knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as a family. The sun finally sank below the horizon, and the first stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky. Adam inhaled the cool evening air deeply, feeling truly at peace. He had found his place in the universe, not in a specific location, but in the hearts of those he loved. With one last glance at the star-filled sky, Adam turned and headed inside, ready to embrace whatever new adventure awaited them. After all, with Rui by his side and Frida to return to, there was no challenge too great, no odds too impossible to overcome. The galaxy was vast and filled with wonders, and their greatest journey was just beginning. Well, dear listener, you've reached the end of our cosmic roller coaster. Congratulations on surviving slave traders, corrupt politicians, and the occasional bad space pun. I hope you enjoyed this tale of love, liberation, and learning to appreciate the little things, like the dust on a bounty hunter's boots or the way your blue-skinned alien crush looks at you under the light of twin suns. If you're feeling the urge to go out and overthrow an intergalactic corrupt government, maybe start small, try reorganizing your sock drawer first. It's less likely to put a price on your head. Thank you for lending your ears, or whatever auditory organs you have, to this adventure. Remember, in the vast expanse of the universe, you too can find love, justice, and a really cool spaceship. Just watch out for those pesky tractor beams. Until our next journey among the stars, keep your blaster charged and your heart open. Who knows, your own blue-skinned beauty might be waiting just around the next nebula.